welcome back to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7 FM. Please like us at our Facebook page, where you'll find all our videos and other announcements, and at our new website at livefromtheheartland.com. Usually within a day or two of each week's show, we have audio and video up, so feel free to enjoy some of our past shows. The next gentleman we have around the Live from the Heartland microphones is a dear old colleague who I've not seen for a few years. Toure Muhammad is the editor, publisher, producer of Bean Soup Times, which is only one hat he wears, but under that hat a whole bunch of other stuff goes on. What is a Bean Soup Times, Toure, in the 21st century?
In the 21st century, Bean Soup Times is a media and marketing company that is geared towards helping black businesses, organizations, and artists tell their story.
And this is something that you started, I remember, in the early days of blogging, and we barely were calling the internet, and newspapers were beginning to flail about, and we weren't quite sure what this new medium and new platforms would mean. You were actually doing a little news blog when you got started.
I was, and actually we started in print. When the first manifestation of Bean Soup Times was the best way to describe it was a black response to the Onion.
There you go.
It was the Onion for the black community, and it was an amazing ride. But in 2009, I noticed how my online revenue was paying for the print, and the print was my biggest cost. So I said, you know what, it's time to move on. That's when, like you're saying, email was really exciting. Everybody had Hotmail and Yahoo accounts, and people were excited to get something in their email of news. So we had a mixture of news and humor, and but I knew in about 2010 it was time to remove the satirical part and focus on some of the issues that were affecting the south side and the west side of Chicago.
But you were awfully funny, and it seems to me we need more of that in these days.
Yes. People tell me they want more of that, but I was conflicted with how to handle it with business owners, because business owners didn't really get it, and they said, well, are people going to know that my ad is real in your publication? So it was some of it was about survival, so I had to go to another medium, because that kind of satirical publication just wasn't as known in the black community.
So what is the state of black entrepreneurship these days?
Well,
the recession couldn't have helped.
It didn't help it, but and maybe in some ways it did, because it is really forcing people from the problems with people's 401ks, the problem with retirement and Social Security. People are really understanding that professional corporate job may not be the nest egg, the safety net that it used to be, 20, 40 years ago. So there's a resurgence in entrepreneurism, and it's kind of like, it's kind of like the old West. People are just trying to figure out how to survive and doing whatever it takes to build a business, not really understanding the principles of business yet as a whole, but just knowing that they need to be doing something, making something, producing something. So now with, in some ways SCORE, SBA, and then organizations that know how to help build and teach business principles are really opening up their doors to make it more feasible for people who may have a great skill to now learn how to build an actual business around it, as opposed to, just kind of being self-employed.
Toure, what is the what would you say the relationship to the city is of young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs trying to start a business? I know when we started the Heartland Cafe, there were certainly some people who were helpful, but there were also people, inspectors and other people who weren't so helpful, building department stuff. There used to be payoffs in the old days. And I heard a story that I mentioned to you earlier, I think it was in DNA, about Mahani, a new vegan and vegetarian restaurant that was billed as the last dime of these folks opened this restaurant in South Shore. And I remember spending our last money to buy the food for the first night.
Right.
What can you tell us about that, either that business, but in general the relationship to the city? Is it hard for people getting into business, dealing with the city, or are they helpful?
I've heard, that it's unfortunate, but oftentimes it is about relationships, right? So some people who have good relationships don't have a lot of problems, but I've heard some stories about people getting into business and being held up for 2 or 3 years trying to deal with all of the city issues that come into play where information is not flowing freely. Heidi and I, we have to figure out. We're gonna have to get him on the air maybe, because I don't know if it's Mahani or Majani.
I don't know either. It didn't tell us in that article.
Right, but
it's spelled Majani.
Isn't it right? That's right. And I know he took him a while to actually get it open, and so we're so happy because South Shore is desperately in need of the kind of restaurant that he's bringing over there. Great food, vegan. South Shore, I think that there's a mixture over there of some very professional people who need a place in the community to go.
And you have a particular. Well, let me ask first about what's on the menu for Father's Day.
Well, you know what? I don't know yet. I think one of the things I will be doing is doing something with Real Men Cook. Every year they've been doing events on Father's Day. This year they are doing it in about 5 or 6 different locations throughout the South Side and the West Side. So I'll probably be at one of the locations on the South Side enjoying the festivities.
One of the things that I'm sure came out of your marketing business is that you have a promotion every year now around Black-owned restaurants.
Yes.
You'd like to get some of us Northsiders to some wonderful establishments in the South Side.
Oh, absolutely.
So how's that going?
And is Soul Vegetarian still happening?
Soul Vegetarian is still happening.
Right
they
on.
are, the mother and father of veganism in Chicago, and so they're doing well. They're still open. And I started Black Chicago Eats out of a dare on beansouptimes.com. There was a list out of New York and about Black-owned restaurants, and a couple of friends of mine tagged me in a post and said, we need one for Chicago. And it's amazing because it's actually, restaurants might be the biggest sole provider of jobs to new cooks, new chefs, line cooks, and waiters and waitresses. So when we're talking about this huge problem in the Black community of a lack of jobs, and of course there not being the corporate safety net that it used to be, there are not as many service-oriented type jobs where it used to be all you do is go to McDonald's and you can get a job at McDonald's when you were a teenager. It's not as easy as it used to be. So this opportunity to promote Black-owned restaurants and infuse a level of support that will create more and more jobs is absolutely amazing. So, and what we're finding is over 200 Black-owned restaurants, and we have some up north. There's a few up north, but most on the South Side and the West Side. But it really creates this environment where people can know where to go. Right? When you look at online, if you go to different websites and you want a particular ethnicity, you can just say, I want Thai food, I want Greek, and you can easily find it. But the restaurants,
I want black food.
Right.
So what does that bring you?
Right. It brings you, I don't know, something burnt maybe. you might get Cajun, black and fish, but and it's so diverse. You have soul food, you have vegan, you have Creole, seafood. There's even an Italian Black-owned restaurant called Truth Italian. So the diversity is so incredible because, and it really relates often to the diversity within the Black community in terms of taste and heritage.
I was at an event a few years back, and I think it was at a school. It was a culinary school that the city runs. Is that Westinghouse?
Washburn.
Washburn.
Yes.
And what's the relationship, would you say, of Washburn, which it seemed to me was mostly African American people involved at the school, into these restaurants? I mean, is that an institution now that is feeding younger culinary people into this group of 200 and beyond?
I think it is. I think there's definitely some opportunities there, and not only with Washburn, with city colleges, but then also CPS. A friend of mine that I went to high school with actually runs the entire CPS system. So you have people being fed from the high schools and the colleges. Some are finding work opportunities, and others are, deciding or wanting to break out on their own and just want to get that experience and launch their own restaurant.
I want to shift gears a little bit from your perch as founder of Bean Soup Times and occasional chronicler of what's happening with black entrepreneurs. We've seen recent census data that suggests for a reverse migration of sorts may be going on, particularly with the black middle class. Why are people leaving the city? Where are they going? Is this bad news for the region or a natural evolution?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think it is, ultimately, I think it's bad. And here's the reason why. My mother was a school teacher. She's retired now. We moved to Atlanta in 1987. And so there was a migration that began, in the mid-'80s, really. And part of it is because of the violence. I understand tremendously because I've raised 3 children in Chicago, in Chatham on the South Side. I'm thankful that they are doing well, but there's always a thought of, man, you don't want anything to happen to your children, right? So what you have is people who go to school, go to college, or start a business and create some type of basic economic foundation for themselves and their family. They say, man, there's too much violence in the city, I'm going out to the suburbs, I'm moving out of the city. And so what you have really is oftentimes some of the best and the brightest in the neighborhoods, in the communities, leaving out. And so you don't see an example of regular folks, hardworking folks going home that are doing a little bit better than the average in the neighborhood. So that produces an environment where now people start, when you're hungry, when there's poverty, people who normally may not do criminal activity, when you're faced with trying to feed your little child, people resort to anything to try what they think is their overall survival. So when the middle class leaves, it really hurts. And then you combine that, which I think is there's too much highlighting the negative aspects of what happens on the South Side and the West Side of Chicago. And yes, there are those moments, they're unfortunate, they're horrible, that happen, but there's also a lot of great stuff, right? So from the media aspect, from the arts and culture aspect, we know if we start controlling and creating the narrative that we want, then we can change the environment. But everybody is saying, not everybody, but a lot of people are saying, man, in order for me to survive, I have to get out of the West Side and South Side of Chicago, as opposed to looking at the environment and saying, you know what, we need more black businesses, we need more black entrepreneurs. A neighborhood is going to survive if you have strong businesses, you have a strong families, and I think it was, I don't know, somebody was telling me this, I don't know if this is actual fact, maybe y'all can correct me, but the Dutch, right, in South Holland, in Chatham, was established by mostly Dutch. And the Dutch had a mentality of you work, you live, and you play in the same area. So that's what we have to create on the South Side and West Side, where professional folks that, go downtown. If you go downtown to work, that's fine, but at least create opportunities where we can purchase from black-owned businesses in the community and help, funnel some of that money. We need to be supporting our schools a lot better. I love what Chance the Rapper did, giving $1 million to CPS, and I think it was allocated towards arts and culture. But at the same time, you gave $1 million to a system that is already proven they don't know how to handle money properly. So it's a catch-22, So, but if we have more control over what happens in our schools, when Rob decided to close schools, I didn't see any surveys, I didn't see any letters going out, I didn't see any town hall meetings saying, hey, here's what we're looking at doing, what does the community think about this? It just happens.
While you're talking, I'm thinking about black entrepreneurs and black-owned businesses. What came to mind was a debate that's been going on probably between Malcolm X and Booker Washington, about the role of of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's still a debate going on. Are there any leftists left in the black community? I'm sure there are. There's up and coming entrepreneur types. Are they ideologically conservative or Republican or capitalist oriented? Can you throw any light on that muddled question?
Well, there's a lot of diversity, and people are definitely forming opinions, not necessarily from a political standpoint, but looking at the conditions in the community, right? So there is that lofty long-term thought of, okay, we need to be able to create an environment where everybody has a opportunity to eat, to work, but this is still philosophical, right? Everyone understands while we have a certain long-term goal, how do we get there? Now, we're in a capitalist society. We're in a place where those green dollars matter, and they help things to happen. They help move things. So I think some of the biggest consensus I've heard, and it's something that I agree with for now, it's about getting resources and money into the hands of people who actually are doing something, who care about the community. And even in the capitalistic society, if that's done, you'll have more resources. Almost 90%, about 90% of the business owners I talk to, they're in business not because they have this desire to become the next Rockefeller or the DuPonts. Their desire is to create enough revenue and resources to hire young people, and not only for it to be a source of employment, but I know business owners that bring them on and they really mentor them. They really bring them on and help train them and make sure they have a good outlook and focus for their future. You have some that they have the restaurant or the business on one side, and they'll say, man, Toure, what I really want to do is it's a homeless shelter I want to create. That people who come in here, I just feed them because they don't have any money. So so they're thinking about things that will help provide solutions. So if enough, this whole idea now of social enterprises, really combining nonprofit and for-profit enterprises in a way where you're providing real solutions to the community. This is what I see in many black business owners.
So you referred earlier to changing the narrative around the West and the South Side, and I wondered to what extent you or the community may be looking to our political leadership to play a role in that. Do you think Ram can recover from school closings and daily debt and the DOJ report on police accountability, or not?
Well, to be honest, I really don't care what happens with him politically. If communities on the South Side and the West Side come together and accept responsibility for changing our communities, if we put together an agenda that is clear, concise, and that is proactive, then whatever he does, we shouldn't have, when you start a community media workshop, right, many years ago, it's been so much conversation and activity about what those political folks can and should be doing, and we're having the same conversations. We can go back 40, 50 years. I don't think the solution is more black, Latino politicians, because we've had more than enough, and we still have the same condition. So if we come together and make sure that whoever is in office is following an agenda that is going to be for the betterment of all communities, then we'll have something to talk about.
On a more sublime note, given the attention 45 is given to some people of faith, namely Muslims, you're a practicing Muslim. How are you practicing Ramadan this year, given the context we have domestically and around the world?
Well, in terms of practicing Ramadan, it really stays the same. One of the biggest principles about Ramadan is that we're not eating during the daylight hours, right, from sunup to sundown, and we're not drinking. And the principle around that is to be thinking about people who can't eat right now because of whatever conditions, whether it's war-torn conditions in other countries, whether it's poverty here. You have people who are less fortunate. So during Ramadan, the Muslim community is not thinking about themselves. We're thinking about others. And so we continue that. And, you know, it's been some interesting things with 45. I think that, you know, they're forcing a coming together. People of like-minded, regardless of religion, but just focusing on what's right, what's humane. And I don't know how much thought he puts into the bigger picture, but as a black Muslim born and raised in America, and the struggles and the travels of my ancestors here, I don't have any problem with speaking out against injustice and wrong. And if it's going to be a blanket conversation about the Muslim community, and you want to label everybody as a terrorist, then, you know, there's a strong group of black Muslims here who would love to have a conversation about terrorism and how religion has been used in this country to promote that. You know, it's 96 years ago, 1921, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was Black Wall Street, where there were a strong group of black folks who were pulling themselves up out of slavery and created an incredible community. And because of religious and race hatred, they were destroyed. Yep. So we can't repeat those type of things today.
Toure Muhammad of Beef Soup Times. I knew this would be an intriguing conversation, and way too long since we've had a chance to catch up. So we hope that we'll do it again soon. And good luck as you go into the summer with your promotional entrepreneur. I have to tell people, he has a wonderful t-shirt on today. Buy black, give black, love black. So thank you so much for joining us, and good luck.
Thank you.